I have to announce that Pierre is now telling us about experiments of social features in Matrix, and this will be the last of our content talks here on the main stage and in the stream. So if you have any questions about this talk or about any other topics, use the possibility to come into our room and put your feedback or questions in there. And now, Pierre, the stage is yours.
Thank you.
Maybe you get a applause from the crowd here. Okay.
All right, thank you. So I'm Pierre from Technostructures, and we had been developing the activity pub bridge Kazama for a few years, and it's gonna be released at some point. But we also wanted to try stuff on the social network space, and we know we're not the only ones thinking about things that would make Matrix into a nice social network. There are other people doing things like Commune, Mindstrix, and other ones. So we just wanted to, start thinking about it and gather feedback from the community, thinking together, because if we can have platforms that are interoperable, that's obviously better. All right. So I don't have to talk that much about what's the current situation with social networks. I think Cory Doctorow's word of enshittification is very popular, and it shows that there was a lack of a word to tell what people felt. So other things are pretty bad. We know that we prefer decentralized networks. Moderation and state pressure is also something. In France, for instance, it needed for the state just to ask nicely to social networks for them to remove every video of street riots. So that's something that should be avoided. One of the things that we thought would be pretty easy to do on Matrix is to use the fact that we can store any JSON to have to display them in different views, because it seems that communities could find nice to have different ways to communicate, for instance, having chats, but also forums. And we wanted to have something that is more like Twitter-like, and also a media view. One thing that we wanted to do too is the kind of reply tree that you may find on Twitter or Reddit or Hacker News. There is an MSC that is quite abundant, but we thought that we wondered if we could also only use reply for that. It's also something about user experience, because we wanted to do something else than if you're used to Twitter. If you want to see the replies and you navigate to the replies and you come back and you see other replies, and so on and so forth. And on Reddit and Hacker News, they use indentation levels, which is also it's a solution. But we wondered if we could do better. Something that is pretty important and that we're still finding out how to do is how to have public posts. So for now, we're using the guest mode in clients, and it works. So you can load the page without having an account and just see the messages in a room. We are using routing with URL fragments, like Element does, so that our HTTP server serving the client doesn't know which room you're in, which is pretty important. But it's both not that good looking, and also it prevents us from doing server-side rendering, which would make it, because since we are using guest mode, the applications need to load the client, register a guest, and then it can display the event. So we are thinking that maybe we can simply have a way for people to generate URLs, and then if they use them as shared URLs, it could be faster. So there is also something about the structure of social networks that is different between Matrix and other systems like Facebook or Twitter or Mastodon, is that on Matrix, everything happens in rooms, while on the other social networks, you have what I like to call like a megaphone way, so that people just are shouting in a megaphone, and other people may see what people say on their feed or not. So there are things that we are not the only one to think about doing, is to use rooms so that people can have a profile room, like a wall, but it also needs feeds, so that's something that we are wondering how to do. It could be special rooms that aggregate events from other rooms. And we can do it in a client. It may not be very efficient, so yeah, that's where we're at. Other important features that we'd like to do is that seem to be important if we do something like that, are private rooms, because it would make it one of a social network with private communities and encryption, which would be very nice. Moderation is an important part of social networks too, and this needs to be well done. Even forwarding would allow this kind of repost thing that we often find. Search is important too, and if we manage to bridge the social network with ActivityPub from day one, it would be very nice too. Yeah. So I wanted to talk about how using Matrix can improve on what ActivityPub does, because ActivityPub is very nice and it has brought us nice applications. But the federation is ActivityPub is managed in a different way than Matrix. And it makes it not a technical thing, but a political thing, because you have shared feeds, federated timelines, and you have moderation on your instance. So although on Matrix you don't really care which servers are federated, on ActivityPub it's important, and we think that it's part of the tension that exists between people who want to have public social networks or more private, or tension between those who want to federate with Threads, the network from Meta, and those who don't. So those are things that Matrix can improve upon. So what we've been doing is a web application. So it's built in OCaml and transpiled to JavaScript using Melange. It's pretty fun that we can build something pretty quickly, because we don't have to do any backend work. We are simply building a client, and for free we have authentication and publish, subscribe things and everything. It's connected to the matrix.org right now, so that's where guests are created. That's something that we'd like to change eventually. All right. So let me do a quick demo of what we have achieved. So we have many rooms that can have a type when they are created, and we can also overload how those are displayed. This is the view that we've spent most time doing, because it was a challenge, I think. So this is some kind of Twitter feed view. And this is a way that we thought about handling the reply tree. So we are simply using the fact that you can select a message and then see which one are those children which are just loaded. And upon that, we added the way to change between siblings using arrows. And we've added a way to buttons to collapse trees and this kind of things. We've added a button to do some sort of depth-first traversal, so it could be nice for back and forth conversation that sometimes happen, and it also has the way of loading siblings like that. We have a chat view, which is pretty rough at the moment, a forum view, which is even rougher. But yeah, it's going to be improved. And also media room to see images should work. So yeah, that's what we've been doing. I'm not sure if it's something that interests people or that could work. So I'd be happy to gather feedback on that. And yeah, it's a very early stage development. So that's it. We are a non-profit. You can support us if you want. We still don't know how we are gonna manage our infrastructure. So that's something that we can have help for. Yeah, that's it. Okay.
Yes, thank you, Pierre. I'll straight go to the question in the back.
Thank you. I wonder if you are already using custom events, if you are using any custom events in what you've shown in the demo, or if it's native matrix events.
No, those are simply messages events. So what we've seen here, it's something that also appears on Element, for instance, using threads and replies. So it stays compatible even if it's when you have users using one type of front end on user. It's probably not perfect, but it tends to stay as much compatible as possible.
All right.
There's another question. On MSC2023, the Twitter-style threading one, it's not technically abandoned. The history on that one is that we wrote it for Blue Sky back when Blue Sky was trying to decide what protocol to use, and we wanted to demonstrate that you could build a Twitter clone on top of Matrix, and that's what Cerulean was, as a little React app that uses purely MSC2836 to talk to Dendrite in order to render a Twitter clone UI. And we showed it to Jack Dorsey and Parag Agarwal, who was CTO at Twitter at the time. And it turned out that they wanted to build their own protocol rather than build on top of an existing thing like ActivityPub or Matrix. However, I think the MSC is pretty good.
Okay.
It's, no, it hasn't evolved because we haven't worked on it, but also because we haven't needed to work on it. The implementation in Dendrite is there, and it still works. And you should be able to go to cerulean.matrix.org and play with it and see that it works today. So whilst on one hand, I really like the kind of pragmatic approach of normal threads and normal replies, and it looks, based on the compatibility you just showed in Element, that it works really well. I wouldn't totally dismiss the idea of 2836 because personally I think it's probably the right way to do a Hacker News or a Twitter-style free-form deep threading thing, even though it's a couple of years old. So it's not dead, it's just dormant.
Okay, the only thing I was wondering is that it only adds some kind of relationship that is almost the same as a reply relationship. So I thought it would be best to use the reply relationship since it also adds the context when you're seeing it from Element or
Absolutely. So I mean, the actual event structure is pretty much the same. The big new thing though on MSC2836 wasn't the event format, but the navigation API, I think called /relationships from memory, which allows you to basically do a navigation of a tree structure. Yeah. And go say, hey, I want to get 5 messages deep and 10 messages wide, and then you kind of walk your way through the tree of messages like that in a way that matches the sort of threaded UI that you get in Twitter, where it shows you a couple of peer responses, and then you have a thread, and then some more peers and all that sort of thing. So it's more how you navigate through it if you wanted to render it as a arbitrarily deep nested UI.
Yeah, that's right.
This is really cool, though.
Thank you.